transform this vision into reality, it requires that the active collaboration and commitment of both our families, drawing on the rich legacies of mutual respect, understanding, and shared purpose. As our time together in this city of bridges and crossroads comes to a close, we are reminded of the permanence of moments, but the enduring nature of ideas. The conversations we are going to have, the bridges we have begun to build, and the dreams we are envisioning together will leave an indelible mark on our shared histories in Istanbul, with its deep roots in both our traditions, has served as more than just a town. It has been a living testament to the possibilities of unity and the strength of diversity. Our shared narrative is far from over. Let this not be the end, but rather a spiritual beginning. Prayer on all communities, leaders and individuals around the world. The path to understanding is lifelong, but with every step taken in respect and collaboration, we draw closer to a world where faiths not only coexist, but thrive together. As our party goes, let us carry with us the lessons learned, the friendships formed, the hope that one day our collective efforts will lead to the envisioned future, one earth, one family, and one future. And I would like to thank particularly those who are here today, all of you who have come to represent your different churches and organizations in the Islamic communities around the globe. We are very grateful to the Interfaith Alliance as well for being able to have this event here, and also very grateful to His Holiness for having this event under these auspices. And with your participation, I'm looking forward for a very fruitful discussion and to engage in the dialogue today and for the future. Thank you very much.
I think with great people with me on the stage, I'll be speaking last because my job is to tell you how today will go. So if I may pass the microphone to Sheikh al-Islam.
In the name of the Supreme Creator, Your Holiness, Mother Muhammad, honorable representatives of the Interfaith Alliance, distinguished statement, religious leaders and scholars.
İlk növbədə qeyd-edilmək çərçivəsində onun dinlərarası forum ücreti İstanbul görüşünə dəvət edildiyine göre Əziz qardaşım, dinlərarası alyansın baş katibi, baş metropolit, Sazın bölgəsləri, Ömənli Həzrətlərinə və səhvirin təşkilatçılarına minnətdarlığını ifadə edir.
First of all, I would like to express sincere gratitude to my dear brother, Secretary General of the Interfaith Alliance, His Eminence Elder Metropolitan Emily, and the organizing team of the event for their kind invitation distinguished participants. Today's meeting, held under the patronage of His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch in the city of Istanbul, a unique meeting place of world civilizations and cultures, is of particular importance. The Almighty has advised us in the Holy Quran, "Let be there among you a group who call to goodness, encourage what is good, and forbid what is evil." Al-Imran 104. So, the religious figures representing millions of people have come together in today's meeting with this intention exactly. This effective international platform serving the interests of humanity is a practical manifestation of the importance of the highlighted initiative.
Hörmətli forum işçiləri, təəssüflə mədəniyyət bir dünyada beynəlxalq sabitliyə və təhlükəsizliyə ən böyük təhdid haqları ksenofobiya təcavüzləri olan islamofobiya, xristianofobiya, antisemitizm hallardan reallaşması müşahidə olunmaktadır. Bəzi Avropa ülkelərində dövlət orqanlarının razılığı ilə müsəlmanların müqəddəs kitabı olan Quranın təhqir edilməsi və yandırılması faktları dinləri və cəmiyyətləri nifrətə təhqir edən, sivilizasiyalar arası qarşı durmanı alovlandıran mənəvi bir terror, BMT-nin İnsan Hüquqları Şurasının bu hadisəyə əlaqədar qətnamə qəbul etməsi vəziyyətin ciddiliyini göstərmişdir.
Distinguished participants, regretfully, I have to note that the manifestations of xenophobia that are being observed in the different parts of the world, including Islamophobia, Christianophobia, and anti-Semitism, are the biggest threat to international stability and security. Insulting and burning of the holy book of Muslims, the Quran, happening in some European countries under permission of the state authorities is a moral terror that incites hatred between religions and societies and ignites the conflict between civilizations. The resolution adopted by the UN Human Rights Council on these incidents is an indication of the extreme seriousness of the situation.
Roma Papası Francis böyle Al-Azhar'ın baş imamı Şeyh Ahmed Al-Tayyip arasında Abu Dhabi'de imzalanmış insan kardeşliğine dair sanatda Mekkep beyannamesinde dünya ve ananevi dinlerin bilgilerinin aslına bulunmasında dini bilgilerinin ikinci Batı sametinde ilgili dinler arası forumların kabul ettiği beyanatlarda bu makamlar ayrıca tespit oldu.
These points are clearly reflected in the document on human fraternity, signed in Abu Dhabi between Pope Francis and Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyip, as well as in the Mecca Declaration, in the statements of Astana Congresses of the leaders of world and traditional religions, and the Baku Summit of world religious leaders, as well as G20 interface forums.
Kabul edilmiştir ki tehlike dinen değil, dinin siyasileştirilmesi, din adına siyasi maksatlar usulsüz istifade olmasının nedeniyle teessüfle belirtmek isteyen ki son zamanlar bazı beyanatlar dinin teşkilatlar tarafından sülhe asayişe hizmet etmeyen, halkları karşı durmaya tehdit eden ardıcıl bir istihaklı mevki tutan garantisi kampanyalar aparılmakta, devletlerin dahili siyasetine müdahale etmektedir.
It should be recognized that the source of the threat is not religion, but the politicization of religion, the abuse of the name of religion for political purposes. Very unfortunately, I have to note that recently some of the international religious bodies have been conducting biased campaigns that do not serve peace and order, but provoke people to conflicts. They take a consistent one-sided position and interfere in the internal politics of states.
Biz muharebe dehşetlerini ve felaketlerini yaşamış, komşu devlet olan Ermenistan'ın Azerbaycan'a karşı tezahüratı neticesinde 20% torbalarımız 30 yıla yakın işgal altında olmuş, 1 milyondan artık soydaşımız kaçtı ve meclis sözünün meşakkatini yaşamış. Azerbaycan saldırı sürecinin rehberiyle beynaklı hukuk normalarına eğitimin ilanlanması ve onun da düzenlemesi esas alarak Dünya Birliği tarafından tanınan arazi bütünlüğü berpa ettik. Biz bugün işgal bölümünde dağılmış milli, dini, manevi abidelerden berpa edip işgaldan azat edilmiş torpaklarımızı mimarlardan temizleyerek yeniden kurma işleri yapalım.
We have been suffered from the horrors and disasters of war. As a result of the aggression of neighboring Armenia against Azerbaijan, 20% of our lands was occupied for nearly 30 years, and more than 1 million of our compatriots experienced the tragedy of refugees and IDPs. Relying on the norms of international law, the UN Charter and 4 resolutions of the UN Security Council, the people of Azerbaijan, under the leadership of our president, have restored their territorial integrity recognized by the world community. Today, we are restoring our national, religious, and spiritual monuments destroyed during the occupation. And we are carrying out reconstruction works, cleaning our liberated lands from the landmines.
Azerbaycan Ural analara malik tolerant olacak. Azerbaycan'da din yönetme ve seçkiline yol verilmeden bütün dini cemalar beraber bunlarla temin oldu.
Azerbaijan is a tolerant country and has its multicultural traditions. All religious communities in Azerbaijan are enjoying equal rights without discrimination of religion or sect, and performing their worship under the protection and care of state.
Hürmetli forum iştirakçıları, bunlardan Kur'an-ı Kerim'de buyurduğu için Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ve la tufsidu fil ardı ba'de İslam. Yeryüzü ıslah olunduktan sonra orada hasat bırakmayın. Çağdaş dünyada üretilen teknoloji ve muharebe dine eseri iktisatçının bozulması, mumlik torbalarının yararsız hava salınması sebebinden yaşanan gıda basın çalışılmazlığı, erzak tehlikesizliği ve şeriyetin narahat eden problemlerin ön belgesindedir.
Distinguished participants, as it is said in the Holy Quran, and do not make mischief in the earth after it has been set in order. Paragraph 56. Environmental and war crimes committed in the modern world, food and water shortages due to destruction of the ecosystem, turning fertile lands unusable, and the issue of food security are at the forefront of the problems that concern all humankind.
Dünyanın birçok bölgelerinde baş veren narişeler bizi ciddi narahat ediyor. Din kadınları olarak bizim beslenimiz, narişe eden taraflara çağrış ederek herbi ameliyatlara son koyulmasını, ateşkes ilan edilmesi, bütün problemleri, meselelerin danışıklar vasıtasıyla hallolunmasına davet ediyor.
The conflicts occurring in many regions of the world are of great concern to us. Our obligation as clerics is to call upon the conflicting parties to end hostilities, declare ceasefire, and resolve all problems through negotiations. Distinguished participants, interreligious and intercivilizational dialogue and cooperation are extremely important topics of the 21st century. We support all the initiatives of today's event for the sake of improving the interreligious cooperation and establishing peace and tranquility in the world. And we confirm our readiness to contribute to the good deeds to be done with these goals. Let me express once again our gratitude to the organizers of the event. We believe that through such meetings, all existing problems can be solved around the table. We are confident that these efforts will be blessed by the Supreme Creator. May the Almighty bless us in our good intentions and deeds. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Herkese merhaba. I want to say so sorry. I am not have a speech in English because I will continue my speech in Turkish language, but I need translator. You make translate? Anyone translate?
If he speaks in Arabic.
If you speak in Arabic,
Yes.
You can translate. Up to
if you speak in Arabic, I can translate.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not speak too much. Tamam. Öncelikle Efendi Hazretleri, Pede Hazretlerine çok selam ve saygılar sunuyorum.
First of all, my deep regards to His Holiness.
Diyanet İşleri Başkanımız ve İstanbul Müftümüzün selamlarını bütün herkese iletiyorum.
I'm happy to convey greetings and best regards of the President of Religious Affairs of the Republic of Turkey and the Mufti of Istanbul to all distinguished participants.
Dünyanın çeşitli ülkelerinden İstanbul'umuza teşrif eden misafirlerimize de tüm hazırına başta Şeyhülislam Hazretleri olmak üzere hepinize hoş geldin diyorum.
And let me welcome all of you, particularly His Virtue Şeyhülislam Alaşur Paşazade and all distinguished participants. Welcome to Istanbul.
Böyle bir programın İstanbul'da yapılmasının çok anlamlı olduğunu ifade etmek istiyorum.
I believe that it is very meaningful that such a meeting is taking place in Istanbul.
Asırlar boyunca bir arada yaşamış insanların, dinlerin hiçbir münakaşa ve muharebeye meydan vermeden dünyanın en huzurlu kentlerinden biri olması sebebiyle İstanbul seçimi çok güzel olmuş bu program için.
I believe that it is very good and right choice because Istanbul is that place where throughout centuries there was no conflict between religions and there was a good and peaceful coexistence.
Ben bu toplantıdaki çalışmaların ortaya çıkaracağı neticelerin de hayırlara vesile olmasını diliyorum. Hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum.
I pray to the Almighty for the success of today's meeting and decision that will be taken here, and I greet all of you once again. Thank you.
Your Own Holiness, Your Excellencies, old friends and new friends, my name is Dana Marzouki. I'm the President of the Interfaith Alliance for Safer Community. We are an organization that was established not so far along. Our job is to empower faith leaders to work for the safety and security for our communities. We tackle issues that concern all faiths, and we are here together in partnership with His Eminence Emmanuel for this workshop that we hope that will bring so much to the conversation on the Muslim and Christian faith, interfaith dialogue. So I want to explain to you why we are discussing this under the umbrella of G20, one Earth, one family, and one future. For so long, the international agenda of presidents of the world and for great politicians did not take into consideration what faith leaders want to bring to the table. Faith leaders are community leaders. They represent millions and millions of people. And as we heard from His Old Holiness and the great speeches, the opening remarks today, there was never a conflict between faiths on the goodness of humanity and of the importance of the environment and of the sanctity of humans, of children, of vulnerable communities. So it's only natural that we, the faith community, bring to the table, to the discussion, to the G20 leaders of the world, our thoughts, our ideas, and our recommendations. This event today is not an isolation of many events that happened with the presence of the great people in this room. So we've had an event in Abu Dhabi, we've had an event in India, we've had an event in the Philippines, Sao Paulo, Brazil. We are going to have another event in India next week, and we are here in Istanbul, and as the Deputy Mufti said, we are in a country that's very suitable to bring this interfaith discussion because it's a country that has embraced faith all across centuries. So today we will be discussing three topics. We are going to discuss Earth environments, we are going to discuss family, and we are going to discuss future. So the way it's going to work is the following. Following these opening remarks, there will be thematic introductions. So we will introduce the themes of today: one Earth, one family, one future. So His Eminence Archbishop Nikitas will talk about human trafficking. Dr. Mustafa Ali will talk about child protection and refugees. Dr. Muhammad Sanusi will talk about conflict resolution and peace building. And I will be presenting a little bit on climate change. Following that, we will break into the first discussion. We will have two rooms with discussions. The first discussion will be on One Earth. So it will be, the participation will be around talking about climate change, food security, conflict resolution, and peace building. Following that, we will have a lunch where we can also network and talk to each other and meet each other and get to make friendships. Following lunch will be discussion on one family. So we are going to talk about child abuse and exploitation. We will be talking about human trafficking, and we will be talking about hate crimes and hate speech. Following that with a break, we will discuss the final element, which is one future, where we are going to be divided into groups, and we will discuss how Christian and Muslim faith communities can work together to build bridges and serve our communities. I think today's spirit is us discussing with each other our thoughts and our ideas. So we'll have facilitation in the discussion groups to help you with questions and answers and bringing your ideas to fruition. And then at the end of the day, His Eminence will be closing remarks with the key recommendations that we will come from today. So thank you so much for the opening remarks. And may I invite to the stage Dr. Mustafa Ali and Dr. Mohammed Sanusi. Thank you for Sheikh al-Islam for the opening remarks that he provided. It was very inspirational. And thank you so much to Mr. Ahmed Akulul, the Regent of Istanbul, for the welcome to his country. Thank you so much. And we will start with the thematic reviews. Thank you. Allow me to start from my right. So His Eminence Archbishop Nikitas will be talking to us about human trafficking under the thematic review of one family migrant.
Good morning to all Your Holiness, esteemed religious leaders, sisters and brothers. Each day when we look at the newspapers, listen to the radio, watch television, we hear the serious tragedies surrounding life on earth, especially the life of people, individuals who are suffering because of modern slavery and human trafficking. Some 50+ million people are either trafficked or enslaved these days. In a world which claims to be civilized, a world which claims to be looking to the future, but a world that is also suffering because of this abomination and this plague. If we're looking at the theme of one family, we believe that a family protects its children. The family protects one another. The family stands in unity. And in our days and times, because of war, not only in Ukraine and Russia, in the various places across Africa, because of the issues of migration, the southern border in the United States, the people leaving Asia for a better life, we see that people have become commodities and they are sold as pieces of furniture. They are sold as objects. They have been stripped of their humanity and their dignity, while we know in the beginning God created us in His image and His likeness, and we were set as stewards of creation, but not masters over the world. There are many misunderstandings concerning human trafficking, Most people think it is about the sex trade. It is not. The greatest situation now, or the greatest example concerning human trafficking, has to do with labor. People who are used for one form or another and endangered labor, or cannot escape the situations and the realities of their life. The forced labor is both industrial and domestic. I live in London, but it is a city where those who have come to work have had their passports taken, they are forced to labor, and their salaries are minimal, only to exist. There's also domestic labor, as we know of in France. But the issues surrounding trafficking and modern slavery, besides the sex trade and the labor force, include adoption, the selling of body parts and organs, forced marriage, forced begging, even child soldiers. Families and the universal family of humanity has failed to protect its children. We've allowed them to become the instruments and the commodities for profit. The leaders of the nations and the political leaders of the world look for prosperity and gain for their countries. Those who are engaged in human trafficking and modern slavery also look for profit and gain, but for their own pocket. We seem to think that those trafficked are the other, and not our own families and not our own people. We seem to think that those trafficked or enslaved are outside our home, and yet your son, your daughter may be trafficked and living at home and may be a source of income for the family. What goes on with human trafficking exists in really three steps. First is the idea to act. Someone takes the initiative. There is a force, coercion, fraud, deception, abuse, even abduction, and someone is forced into slavery. Secondly, there is the means and by which these people are recruited or entrapped. And finally, the purpose, of course, is exploitation, financial gain, and profit. If we fail to protect our children and the present and future generations, we fail ourselves. There will be no family. There will be no future. In order to overcome some of these challenges, His All Holiness established a task force on human trafficking and modern slavery. The task force has held international conferences, bringing together scholars, religious leaders from all the faith traditions. Two of the conferences were held in Istanbul, one in Buenos Aires, recently a smaller conference in Thessaloniki, Greece, and in the year 2024, another one here in Istanbul. And it is to educate and to teach people, because our world brings together individuals in great mass in 3 or 4 different ways. First, there are sports events. Secondly, there are musical events. And then there are religious gatherings, whether in mosques, synagogues, or churches. And religious leaders need to be the spokespersons against this injustice and this abomination. Already we are working with schools in the name of the Patriarch and the Patriarchate throughout the world, having published a book called Protecting the Vulnerable. It exists now in English, in Greek, and Ukrainian. Don't think that those people who are crossing the borders for a better life from Ukraine and other regions find security and hope. Young women and children are sold, they are abducted, and they become the commodity of others. The church, as well as mosques, synagogues, that we are gathering of Muslims and Christians here, but we are gathering of people. And we need to join hands in unity and in solidarity. The Patriarch makes his task force available to you and all the resources that we have. And I wish to thank the Interfaith Mission for this initiative with the blessing, of course, of His All Holiness, of the Muslim Islamic leaders who are here, but people from other communities as well. Because if we do not act together, we will die together. Let's look for the future with hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana, for moderating this session. Thank you, Interfaith Alliance, for organizing this gathering here in Istanbul to discuss very pertinent issues that we all hope are going to be listened to and given the due attention that they need at the G20 summit in India later this year. I was asked to speak about refugees and child protection. And this is one of the areas that is least paid attention to. When we speak about refugees, the only time we see children is when they are being shown as suffering little ones on our screens, or we read about them. And these children, in their millions, have minds of their own. They suffer much more than do adults. The trauma that affects a child lasts, if not treated, oftentimes not ever. The children not living properly, but will last a lifetime. And so I want to share with you two stories of two children refugees for you to listen to and understand what children go through. UNHCR, the agency that deals with refugees, estimate that the total number of refugees is now topped 100 million. 100 million people on the move, and 50% of the 100 million people always on the move are children. Children are looking for better places, better life. And I have a story of two stories here. One is of Alia. Alia fled her home in Aleppo, Syria, and is currently living in Lebanon. And this is her story. The last thing I remember of Syria before we left was when my mother was taking me from our place to another. Before we left was when my mother was taking me from one place to our grandparents. The roads were full of dead corpses. I saw dead people with no heads or no hands or legs. This is Alia, 6-year-old. I was so shocked I couldn't stop crying. To calm me down, my grandfather told me they were mean people, the ones that had been killed. And the grandfather meant well, he was just trying to calm Alia down. But Alia said, I still prayed for them because even if some considered them mean, they were still dead human beings. Back at home, I left a friend in Syria. Her name was Rua. I missed her a lot, and I missed going to school with her. I used to play with her and with my doves, the pigeons which I used to keep. One of them had laid eggs. I would feed them and care for them. I'm worried about them. I really pray someone is still caring for them. And I hope and I pray that one day I go back home. That is the story of Alia. I want to share with you a story of Ahmed, another short story, whose father is called Yasir. And for 2 long years, violence has kept Yasir's 5 children. Ali, who's 15, Ahmed, who's 14, Hala, 10, Sadra, 7, and Aya, 3, from living a normal life. They haven't been able to go to school or play outside. The sniper and missile attacks and violence meant learn what type of a weapon was being used, just so that by the ear of the sound. Being scared was a permanent state of mind, says Ahmed. I was always scared. When I went to bed, I always wondered if I would make it to the next morning. Eventually, the violence became too much, and Yasser and his wife decided to uproot their children from Afghanistan to look for a better life in Germany. They were only able to make their long and difficult, treacherous journey from sunset to sunrise, and they hoped they would not be spotted by anyone. Young Hala lost her glasses during the trek, somewhere now in Europe going to Germany. Everything is already strange for me, and now it is also blurry as she had lost her spectacles. She said, it is very scary and not to be able to see clearly. They walked for days until they reached the boat that would carry them into Germany. The water was rough and the children were scared, but the family eventually made it. Now they must wait to register for asylum. They must wait for weeks, months, even years to register for asylum. And during this time, the family must wait outside registration centers every day for their number to be called. There are no facilities to shelter them from the rain in Germany. I am already waiting here all day, says Sadra. We just stand here in the rain, says Ahmed. But I will tell you something. After everything I have been through, a bit of rain cannot hurt me. This is a hopeful story from a child. And many other children. These stories of Alia, Ahmed, and Sadra represent 50 million children around the world. And what must we do to protect children? And I'll share with you 6 points, only 6, that we need to do as faith communities, governments, intergovernmental organizations that we can do to protect children. One is to provide equal support to all refugee children wherever they come from. A child who's a refugee is a refugee. It does not matter whether that child is white or black or brown. It does not matter where that child is coming from, whether from Afghanistan, Syria, from Ethiopia, from any country around the world. The second point is that we must recognize that refugee children are children first. We shouldn't even be calling them refugees. They're children first. And they feel, they experience violence and suffering in the same way as do other children and all children that are refugees. Third, include refugee children and families in social services. It is important that children are included, all children are included in social services wherever they are, so that they can grow up wholly, fully, and feel that they are part and parcel of their communities that they are born to. 4, protect refugee children from discrimination and xenophobia. This is very important for children. When they are moving from Afghanistan, Syria, Ethiopia, wherever they are coming from, and they go and face racism and xenophobia in the countries that they have run to, they suffer double tragedy. And we must put additional efforts to protect the children from racism and xenophobia. 5, end harmful border management practices and child migration detention. This happens every day. Millions of children are detained at border points, and this is something that governments have to do. And you know what? Governments are not going to pay attention to this if faith leaders don't speak up and speak back about what children are facing in border points as refugees. And the last point here is very important. Empower refugee youth to unleash their talents. Oftentimes these refugees are very talented people, and they want to do the best they can, add value to the economy, to the whole set of life in the countries that they are moving to. And we need to empower these young people to unleash their talents and serve communities as they would otherwise serve at home. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning to everybody. And I want to just greet you by the greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum, and peace and blessing of the merciful God be upon all of you. Let me begin by sending my gratitude and respect to His Eminence and His Holiness, the Patriarch Bathory, as well as His Holiness Sheikh al-Islam Shakur, as well as the Mufti, the Deputy Mufti of Istanbul, Mufti Ahmed, and His Eminence Emmanuel, and of course to our dynamic President of the Interfaith Alliance, Dana al-Marzouki. Let me begin by bringing greetings to all of you from His Eminence Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, the President of the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace. He would have loved to be here to this gathering, but due to certain commitment, he is unable to be here. But he supports these particular efforts, and he participated in the gathering in Abu Dhabi for the G20 that was hosted by the Interfaith Alliance. Allow me to also tell you, having just witnessed the development and the growth of the engagement of religious actors in the G20 Interfaith Forum in the past several years, but the recent involvement of the Interfaith Alliance allow the continuity and sustainability of the religious actors' engagement to this very critical forum, which is the G20 Interfaith Forum. Bringing this discussion, the thematic discussion that we're witnessing here today, we already saw that in Abu Dhabi at the end of last year, and continually organizing these events in the regional events in months to come, leading to the G20 Interfaith Forum. My task here today is to bring some kind of points to the discussion on conflict prevention and conflict resolution. Let me begin by telling you about some realities first. The reality of the matter is that conflicts are increasing in the world today. The reality of the matter is that more than 238,000 people died in global conflict just last year. 238,000 people. This is according to the new study just released by the Institute for Economics and Peace Annual Global Peace Index. The report also found that there had been a startling increase in conflict death around the world, particularly mentioning Mali and Myanmar as well. What is really particularly worrying here about this figure is the trend. Researchers have found rising level of conflict around the world. So, just to mention here, to address all of these issues, partnership is very critical. And that's what just Dr. Ali mentioned, partnership between religious actors, civil society, as well as government. With that in mind, we must continue to ask ourselves, how can we foster collaborative efforts between religious actors and government officials to effectively support a whole of society approach in a conflict-affected regions. Religious leaders have long played a vital role in conflict-affected society and situations of transition due to the established governments. We always say our institutions are there to stay, religious institutions. Therefore, their involvement is quite critical here. We establish a very unique, as religious actors, connections based on mutual respect and trust with local communities. These are assets of the religious communities. And religious communities also involved in conflict prevention and conflict resolutions. And here I just want to mention a couple of examples. Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, that you all know, as a prominent Muslim scholar, almost 30 years ago, he actually involved in resolving a conflict that took place between, successfully mediated a conflict 30 years ago between communities in Mauritania and Senegal as religious actors, and was able to come up with a peace agreement. I also want to mention the example as well. You all remember in 1992, Bishop Zubi, now Cardinal Zubi of the Vatican, and the San Egidio community played a key role in negotiating the Mozambique Peace Accord, bringing an end to the 17 years civil war in Mozambique, which killed roughly 1 million people and left around 4 million others displaced. Even today, as we speak, we see religious actors also playing a role in the conflict in Ukraine, in the conflict in Sudan as well. I am in Istanbul today. I always, when I am in this region and other regions, I always remember my good friend, Al-Mawrani Yohanna Ibrahim, Metropolitan Yohanna Ibrahim of Aleppo. We traveled the world together. He involved in conflict prevention. We held meetings almost 11 years ago in Cyprus, trying to bring peace to the conflict in Syria. Today, Metropolitan Ibrahim is not with us here. We believe he's in a good place, and we believe he's still alive, and we hope so. And we pray for him. He is a champion, and whenever I am in a gathering, he's a good friend of mine. I have to remember him. So he also involved in conflict prevention as well. So just to let you know that in order for us to address all of this conflict, I want to focus my few minutes I have right now on the critical role of women and youth in conflict prevention. We need to take a moment and look to the statistics and reevaluate how we view gender dynamic within conflict resolution. The participation of civil society groups is critical, including women's organizations, to make space, to make peace agreement. We have statistic here again, 64% less likely agreements to fail if women are involved in those resolutions. As well as I wanted to mention that we need to ensure to find mechanisms to not only include women, but ensure they have the resources, platforms, and safety measures in place to conduct their work. Youth, as well, are still, unfortunately, looked at as a problem rather than a solution. Yes, youth are primarily involved in fighting within all conflicts around the world, but that does not mean that we should intentionally leave them out of dialogue in which seeks to address these issues. Again, we just saw a new research that came out by the University of Glasgow. Only 12% of the peace agreement conducted during 1990 and 2012 referred to youth. Only 12%. This is really a very low figure. And we understand that at least 208 peace agreements concluded in the context of 70 peace processes across the world Half of these agreements address youth in relation to only a single issue. So without listening to our younger generation and making intentional space for them at the table, the broader faith community risks losing the commitment of the next generation of leaders in promoting religious tolerance and communities to peace. So it is our responsibility as religious and actors and religious communities to continue the work to identify and actualize mechanisms and opportunities to advance the no one behind agenda, especially for women and youth in their diversity, by ensuring these groups have the capacity to meaningfully participate and ensuring there is intentional space created for these groups to meaningfully participate and lead. So a robust mechanisms is needed to ensure systematic change, including integrating of a whole of society approach. And Sustainable Development Goal, as we know, 17 of the United Nations is clearly calling for the collaboration between civil society and communities. So, to leave you with, this past decade has clearly proved that one government, one entity, and one community alone cannot address pressing global challenges. A whole of society approach is critical to strengthening the fabric of society and to ensure a just and peaceful future for all. So through this proper support and capacity building, religious leaders can play an imperative role in the global endeavor for peace. Thank you so much.
I think what we heard from our esteemed speakers, Your Excellencies, will help us in the breakout sessions because they've given us a lot to think about and to reflect, and I think that will facilitate our discussions when we talk about one family and one future. And allow me to shed some light on climate change, some ideas and thoughts that hopefully will help us in the discussion when we break out into our groups. So today we're very blessed to be graced with the presence of His All Holiness Patriarch Bartholomeus, because he has been a vocal proponent for protecting the environment and is a source of inspiration for us all in this room and in the world. Religious leaders and interfaith dialogue can and must play a critical role in protecting the environment and responding to climate change. And it's also in responding to climate-linked crises to support those impacted by such events. All religions stress the importance of caring for the environment and preserving it for future generations. And by engaging in dialogue, religious leaders can emphasize these shared values and promote a sense of global responsibility to respond to climate change. The consequences of climate change are already very clear. Extreme weather events are more common. Pakistan was devastated by record floods last year, and just 2 days ago, UNICEF issued a warning that 4 million children in Pakistan still need humanitarian assistance. Similarly, the Philippines is becoming more vulnerable to ever stronger cyclones. We heard this during our recent meeting with religious leaders in Manila a few weeks back, where we discussed the role that religious communities can play in responding to climate incidents. Wildfires have becoming more prevalent. We have seen the recent devastations in Canada, Hawaii, Europe, and even the ongoing fires in Turkey. Rising sea levels are placed low-lying communities at risk. So climate change has other consequences as well, such as food and water shortages, displacement and economic disruption. And the Global South is disproportionately facing the brutal of these consequences crisis. So some key actions that religious communities can take. So moral framework. Faith can provide a moral framework to protect the environment. Different religious traditions have teachings that emphasizes ethical and moral obligations to protect nature and care for creation. Interfaith dialogue, like the one here between Muslims and Christians, can help amplify these teachings and making the case to addressing climate change is not only a scientific and economic necessity, but also a spiritual duty. Collaboration and advocacy, so interfaith dialogue can drive collaboration among religious communities. Working together, we can leverage our collective influence to advocate for policy change, sustainable practices, and eco-friendly initiatives at local, national, and global levels. This collaboration can lead to more effective efforts in combating climate change. And I'm very happy to see that COP28 is embracing the role of faith and inviting us to be part of the dialogue over there amongst the world's presidents and leaders. So education and awareness. You can use your platforms to educate communities and provide educational, scientific, and climate change's impactful potential solutions, and spreading accurate information and raising awareness. And of course, conflict resolution. Climate change can worsen existing social, economic, and political tension leading to conflict over resources. And I look forward to the discussions that we are going to have later on after lunch on climate change. In summary, interfaith dialogue is a powerful addition to efforts to combat climate change by uniting people from different religious backgrounds around a common cause, by emphasizing shared values, moral imperatives, collaborations, education, and advocacy. It contributes to the broader movement for sustainable environmental conscious living. So thank you so much for listening today to the thematic introductions that Their Excellencies provided, and I look forward to the breakout sessions that will take place after lunch. So can we announce a minute coffee break after this session before the first group discussion to give us some time to move chairs around? So let's have a coffee break right now. We move the chairs around before we have the first breakout session. The first breakout session will be around One Earth. We will be discussing climate change, food security, and conflict resolution. So let's have coffee and chai breakout before we change the